computer, so I'm having to look up here and look down here on the iPad to see you guys. So good afternoon, EV enthusiasts, EV curious, trailblazers. I'm Johnny B. Welcome you to another exhilarating session of the EV Cafe, where today we're tackling a topic that's been creating quite the buzz, towing with electric vehicles. So during the next hour, we will haul off deep into discussions about the capabilities, challenges, and future potential of towing with an EV. But before we plug and tow in today's agenda, let's give a shout out to the brilliant people who make this session and the EV Cafe possible. So a big thanks to our gold partners, that's Geotab, BAA, Churchill, EV Civils, and Plug Me In. I think that deserves a round of applause. Don't leave me hanging, guys. We also have some very exciting news on sponsorships coming up in next month's session. So if you haven't already, then get registering now. So introducing the stars of today's session, you all know them as the EV Cafe team, featuring Sam Clark from GridServe, Sarah Sloman from Paid Through, Paul Kirby from EV Essentials, and John Curtis. Is he here yet?
Yeah.
Hi, John.
Yeah.
And what's left in the trail of introductions, you ask? Well, our esteemed guests, of course, but you'll have to wait to find out. Or, spoiler alert, look on any of our LinkedIn profiles. But first, let's hear what's currently making waves in the world of EV towing. So Sam, I haven't seen Sam on my iPad just yet, so I'm hoping he's here. Previously at the helm of the logistics business, you know the weight of towing, and now you're working on the EV public infrastructure. So I ask you, how do you think vehicles that tow need to fit in the UK's plans?
That's a good question, isn't it? First of all, welcome everybody. I am here to learn today. You're right, Johnny, having run a logistics company for a long time, weight, as in EIGHT and AIT are also, both very, very important metrics when running a business of that type. And we didn't actually do a great deal of towing in those days, I must be honest, but very conscious of the fact that, the additional weight and payload can affect ranges quite materially. And then in the EV infrastructure world, it's something that we as a collective, not GridServe, but we as a collective industry need to look at in terms of how we facilitate towing vehicles, electric vans, commercial vehicles, buses, all these awkward things which are heavy and long, but also need just as much attention as the passenger car market. So it's definitely something that we as a business, GridServe, but also I know the wider industry is looking at how we can facilitate solutions for towing of vehicles that need to charge. We're going to hear a lot, I'm sure, from the likes of Matt, etc., about the challenges that creates, and the insurance implications of unhitching trailers in order to charge vehicles and things like that as well. So yeah, as I said at the beginning, I'm here to learn because I don't know much about this towing world, but I would like to know more. So I'm very looking forward to this session.
Thank you, Sam. Sarah, my fellow Model Y camper, what's your take on the current towing scenario with EVs? Anything electrifying to share?
Well, I'm actually going to wear two hats for today because, yes, I think it's incredibly important, not least of all, the majority of people who say, oh, I don't want to go electric, often turns out that they tow to the tip or tow on a weekend with a caravan with their family. So I've got something personal to sort of share about this journey towards electrification with towing, particularly of caravans. But later on as well, we'll go into a bit more detail about what that means for you if you are driving electric and you want to tow caravans. But more than that, I'm hoping we're going to have time to think about on your route charging, as Sam was just talking about, but also when you get to your place where you're going to be based. There's very little sort of availability at the moment to support those people wanting to camp. But the Tesla Y for camping has been a game changer. I mean, I haven't used my tent since I got that car because it's just such a delight. And if I was able to plug in whilst camping, then it would really just release all of the anxiety that I've had this year trying to find remote places to stay and then having to stay places I don't really want to stay, but just so that there is facilities to use. So where did you last go, Johnny, and yours?
Last year I went to the Switzerland.
Oh, you did. Some very enviable photos of the up with the lake. It was stunning.
The Swiss landscapes, the starry nights. It was beautiful. But yeah, whilst it provided a nice, unique and cozy shelter, I did find myself wishing for a bit more space. So like Sam, I am all ears for today's session. And to be honest, I've got a plan for next year, and that is to tow a caravan across Europe. Yeah, so again, more space, the same eco-friendly journey is a dream I'm hoping to realise very soon. Paul, I can't see you on my screen because I'm streaming live from an iPad, but aka Electric Van Man, when it comes to electric vans and towing, what do you think is the driving force for the future?
Well, it's a really interesting question, because vans and towing have not gone well together for the early years. There have been some vans that are coming on the market that can tow 1,000 kilos, or in some cases 1,500 kilos, but they're having to borrow from the payload and all this kind of stuff. So the future really needs to be a return to what we used to be able to do, right? To be able to tow up to 3.5 tons in particular, in the large van sector, in the mid van sector, towing upwards of, around the 2-ton mark. These are the sort of benchmarks that we need to get to. And the good news is, and we're going to hear about this today, is that we are seeing the future begin to arrive. And that's the exciting bit for me, seeing vehicles coming onto the market that are able to do what they've always been able to do. There is a compromise on range, and we'll learn about that today. But it is great news that we're seeing vehicles that can tow 3.5 tons. We will see very shortly in the mid-van sector vehicles that can tow 2 tons. We're solving the problems as we're going, and that's what I keep banging on about in all of this market, is that a problem comes up, we solve it. Another problem comes up, we solve it. And we're moving innovatively and inexorably to a normalization of all aspects of commercial vehicle operation, but also for camping and other good things like that. So it's exciting.
Thank you, Paul. And finally, John, currently making waves at the EV Rally in Scotland. So tell us, is anyone showing off their towing prowess over there?
Well, we haven't so much got towing. We do have a camper van, however, which is fully electric and currently charging in Dundee. I have to say to you, Johnny, I'm a complete virgin, and I don't get to say that very often when it comes to towing. I have zero experience. I nearly jackknifed one when I was a younger man, and that put me off completely. So I have nothing of value to add other than I know that this is going to be a real learning experience. I'll come back to the recording of this to learn heaps. Just wanted to say I'm currently at a Dundee hub where there are 10 chargers, all absolutely rammed, all pumping out renewable energy. And this is the sort of infrastructure that we will need for campers, for caravans, for electric vehicles towing. Utterly superb. Really enjoying it, but I'll let you get on with the show.
No worries, John. I have to say, I don't know if you heard it, but I've got the window open because it's very hot at the moment, and a big diesel van just drove past me. And I'm thinking, it just made me thinking, like, a campsite must be a nicer environment to have EVs and stuff like that, towing and motorhomes and whatnot. And I must admit, one of the biggest things that I would quite like to own in the future is that ID. Is it the ID Buzz conversion?
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Green thing.
Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, you can't see me, John.
Sorry,
you can't see me. I have my hand up, but you're struggling with the iPad. Of course.
I think, Paul, you're going to have to do the honours of who's got their hands up, because I can't see everybody on my iPad.
Cool.
So here I am. Thank you for my hand up. Just hearing you talk about diesel, it's a really good time for me to thank somebody actually brilliant called Chris Gatti. He's based in Alesund in Norway. So this whole journey for me about towing and what's going to happen in the future is double-edged, as I said before, about will there be sufficiently accessible charging available en route? And if not, in the meantime, perhaps we need to focus more intently on offering AC charging at destination for the car and the caravan combined. So as a child, and even recently, I still go on caravan holidays. I love caravan and camping. It's just the most pure fun thing to do. And they always had an Adria caravan, which led me on to find out about this Norwegian family who love to camp, and all things electric take them there. So they've recently used a Model X to tow a whopper of a caravan, which was a 2,000 kilo Adria, 3,500 kilometers, which would have normally used 300 litres of diesel. So they also did this test with 3 different vehicles about the best towing capabilities and what those efficiencies are. So I did check that I was allowed to say this out loud and kind of effectively pinch his findings, but I would encourage you to follow Chris Gatti and eCaravaning on Instagram. But they tested the Mercedes EQE SUV 350, the Audi Q8 e-tron 55, and Tesla Model X long range, which I feel like is a prize. Imagine which one you could have. But I was surprised which one was the most efficient, actually. Can you guess, EV panel? So we've got the EQE, the Q8, and the X.
The X?
The Model X, yeah.
Model
the
X.
Tesla, yeah.
Well,
EQE.
E. Mm.
Oh no, I thought that too. Was that what you had on the rally, Sam?
No, I had an e-tron.
You had the Audi e-tron. Well, anyway, so the Mercedes EQE and the Model X were incredibly close. We had to quickly do a calculation there. Thank you, Michael Barton, to get it from watt hours per kilometre to miles per kilowatt hour. So the EQE came at 1.5 miles. So pretty much half the efficiency of driving it without the Caravan. And that figure stayed true for the Q8 at 1.3 miles and the Model X at 1.5 miles as well, but they were marginal. So this actually tallies with the diesel consumption. When you're towing a Caravan, you can expect to halve your efficiency by doing that. And I asked you, Paul, earlier, if that's true of the van world as well.
And well, I think we'll keep that answer. We'll let the man from Iveco answer that question.
Oh, wonderful! Yes.
But I will just throw in something here from Dale Enyon, who is at the Environment Agency, and he mentions the big issue in towing is for the 4x4 pickups that need to tow 3.5 tons. Well, we're going to be talking a little bit today about vans that can tow 3.5 tons, which is a big thing. But I also know of a vehicle that can, and will have a pickup version of it, tow 3.5 tons, which is the Monroe. And watch this space. I might be seeing and driving that vehicle this Friday. Oh, yeah. Anyway, moving on, back to John.
thank you. That's really interesting, Sarah. So thanks for sharing that. Don't worry, I won't miss out on hands up anymore because I figured out how to change the gallery view. But
Amazing.
That's I can't see is John. So I don't know if that's me.
I think John might have gone, actually. He's dropped off. The other thing
he did say signing off.
Yeah, he did say
Okay.
signing off as I'm at 80%, love you all. And also, I'd just like to point out he's saying he's signing off at 80% because that's all the charge that he needs, and he's moving on to allow somebody else to charge. So
the speed of
for good
charging
reason,
is
then.
dramatically down at 80%, we know. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to put my hand up. I'm going to raise my little seagull because we're talking about summer holidays and camping and caravanning. So if you see the seagull, it's because I'd like to share some stats and information.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see John join us again in a moment's
Fingers
time.
crossed.
Yeah.
So it's time to dive deeper into towing capabilities. And over to you, Sam. Would you like to do the honours of introducing our first guest speaker? Before you do that, Sam, remember, people, we encourage curiosity. So drop your questions throughout the session, and hope either JC, John, or one of us will address them during the mailroom section at the end, and you could win a mug. Over to you, Sam.
All right, so Mr. Cutts, Mike Cutts, if you would kindly turn on your video. So Mike Cutts, Light Business Line Director for Iveco UK and Ireland, responsible for the daily product, including launching the new e-daily product into the market. Little known fact, and watch my co-colleagues here roll their eyes at this next statement. I have something in common, as we both recently set Guinness World Records in vans. So whilst Kevin Booker, Fergal McGrath and I took a van 311 miles and 50 miles further than any recorded van has ever gone on a single charge, Mike and the Iveco Daily towed over 153 tons, setting an all-new record in doing so. I think it's safe to say, Mike, if we were towing 153 tons, I don't think we'd have broken our range record. But yeah, so it's nice to see two different ways of applying records to electric vans, which I'm sure Paul will be delighted about. So very welcome, Mike, to our merry crew for the day. And
thanks
over
very
to
much.
you.
Virtual high five for the Guinness World Record on vans.
Thank you.
Is it me, or is Paul looking a bit green? Was it the contrast?
Oh, it's the contrast. Definitely the contrast. Anyway, Mike, welcome.
Thanks a lot. Good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
It's our pleasure, and we'd love to know. Obviously, towing and vans are critical to the future of electric vehicle adoption. I mean, tell us what Iveco have done differently from really any other launch of an electric vehicle that I've been anywhere near, particularly in regard to towing, and give us some hot facts around what can be done.
Yeah, I think the factory took a different approach when designing the product, maybe to what other manufacturers have done, in the fact that they spent 2 years working with bodybuilders and customers to understand what missions they need to perform with an electric vehicle. And what became really clear is that we needed to engineer a product that could do exactly the same mission as a diesel, which is kind of what you mentioned before. So we've really focused on engineering the vehicle with those capabilities in mind, and towing being one of them. So daily diesel is known for 3.5 ton towing as standard, and we wanted to ensure that we're able to provide those operators running diesel products with an EV that can do exactly the same job. So hence the E-Daily has a class leading towing capacity of 3.5 tons. We managed to achieve that by combining a number of different technological innovations with the vehicle. It's really a combination of rear wheel drive, the strength of the chassis on the daily, the 140 kilowatt motor, but probably most importantly, the ability for the batteries to emit twice as much power out as the speed at which they take energy in. And it's that ability to deliver 400 newton meters of torque through the rear axle that allows us to give us the pull-in capabilities that E-Daily can provide at 3.5 tons. So yeah, it's a new solution to market. I think a lot of operators have kind of been waiting for the day where they've been able to select an EV off the shelf that has the capabilities of towing something like a mini digger, which is likely to be 2 tons, and then that's going to be on a 500 kilo trailer. So that's 2.5 tons before you even start. And that will still then give you an extra ton of payload for the van, for tools and equipment, etc. So it really starts to make it a lot more viable now for construction companies, utility operators, municipals, all of those customers that need to tow as part of their daily job. They can now do it with EV with our products, which is great news for us, but also for the market as well.
Absolutely. And Mike, in you, because the first question that we always ask is, of course, what's the impact? And Sarah's done some scientific research with the help from her Norwegian friends.
With Instagram.
And Instagram, wonderful. But Mike, tell us what is the impact of towing, and does the actual amount of weight make a big difference to the sort of efficiency, or is it kind of linear?
Yeah, I mean, it's the simulations from the factory suggest that you're going to lose circa 40% range on the WLTP range on the vehicle if you're towing at a full 3.5 tons, which I guess isn't that far off the predictions of what the car figures that you were stating before are, about roughly half. I mean, ultimately,
this meeting is being recorded.
You're thanks. You're ultimately towing effectively another van weight-wise behind the van you've got, so you could expect the impact on range to be significant. On the positive side, you've got additional weight that you're towing, so there's an improvement on braking regen because you've got the ability for recuperation through the brakes, because you've got momentum from the trailer behind that you've created in the first place by driving it forward. So we're yet to do UK trials with customers on towing to see the true exact figures from a telematics point of view. But yeah, I'd say 40% impact on range is likely at 3.5 tons.
Fantastic. And because I know obviously you recently launched this to customers. What has been the market response to the approach of Iveco, in particular in regard to towing?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the industries that I mentioned before, the utility sector especially, but also construction and municipal, they've all been waiting for an EV to come on the market that can tow significant weights. And a lot of these organizations have probably got the the biggest focus on CSR strategy right now. You know, they all want to move EV. They've all made commitments to go net zero by 2027 or by 2030. A big proportion of their fleet tow, and up until now, they've had to continue to buy diesel because there's not been an option. So it allows those organizations to really accelerate their CSR strategies and move from the low-hanging fruit to maybe the next fruit further up the tree, because there's a product that can do it now.
I've got a question, if I may, Paul.
Go.
So, if I roll the years back, many moons ago, 20 plus years ago, when I had electric motorbikes and scooters, and trying to design those for the first time, nothing has much changed in technology. There's fundamentally three core components: a motor, batteries, and a controller. Right? That's sort of the three core things that make any electric vehicle, go. The thing that I used to break all the time in the early days was the controller, because that was always the bit that was always getting the pressure of all the other things we were trying to do, trying to stress test how fast they could go. It was always the controller, the bit in the middle that just broke or blew up or overheated or whatever every time that we put it through any level of exertion. So I guess my question is it still the same now? Because you had to sort of over-engineer that element of the vehicle in order to be able to take those sorts of strains and stresses, because towing obviously no one's going to be towing 153 tons on any day ever, in the same way that, you know, people aren't going to travel as far as I did in our van either, but you're proving the case that it's doable. But does that put a lot of additional strain? You've got to over-engineer those components to make them bulletproof so that people can actually stress test the components within.
Yeah, I mean, the factory put the vehicle through 2 years of testing before we brought it to market. So I'd say that we're pretty confident that we've got a robust, well-built product that's fit for purpose. Yeah, I mean, the Guinness World Record was, I guess, just a demonstration over how much the vehicle can actually do. And 150 tons over its legal limit is probably a statement to the market to say it's pretty durable and well built. But it's not just about the weight, it's also about torque as well. And that's why on the EV Rally, we towed 2.5 tons up one of the steepest hills in Sheffield. I think it was a 17 to 20% gradient. Again, to prove that it's not just weight, it's also gradient as well, which is typical for any customer driving in the UK. They're going to need to tow that vehicle up a steep hill. So I think by us doing these types of exercises, it just helps to demonstrate the vehicle is capable and to give operators the confidence that it's going to do the job. And hopefully these things really help to build that case.
Yeah, I thought that second example you gave with the video was interesting, because it's a very hard thing to articulate when you're going up a hill that steep. But the video just makes it look like it's a completely normal day and nothing's happening, because it was a normal day and nothing material was happening, because ultimately it was doing the job it was supposed to very, very effectively. So it's quite hard to articulate that in because it just went straight up, didn't it? Like it didn't even wasn't even no issue at all.
And this is the thing I think that is great about moving to electric vehicles, is that the torque and the ability to move stuff around almost effortlessly, particularly going up hills. But one of the things that really impressed me, and I'm interested just to know what the thought process was behind it, when you started pulling the 153 tons, 153.58 to be precise, 153.58 tons, there was minimal, if perceptible, wheel spin on this. And I've seen a tow off between two other branded vans, and all it was wheel spin. There's an immense amount of torque, nearly 200 brake horsepower, which is way more than a van ordinarily would need. But there was no wheel spin. What was the process behind that? And because it's that ratio and other bits and pieces that you guys manage, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, we had a debate before the record about how much payload we should put in the back. We decided unscientifically that a ton felt the right amount, just based on feedback from our engineering team. Yeah, pretty much. So that's what we did. So we loaded the rear axle inside the van, which is probably, when you watch the video, you can see the back of the van a little bit more depressed. So we had a ton of payload on the back axle, and that was really just to obviously give the rear tires a little bit more traction. But we didn't do anything else to the vehicle. It's a standard production vehicle, standard tire pressures. It's single rear wheel drive as well. We do offer twin rear wheel drive, which we know for typical operators can sometimes be preferred for towing, for extra traction and especially driving in more off-road conditions. But we wanted to set the record with a single wheel van, just to try and make it as tough as possible for the vehicle and the mission. So yeah, I mean, I think obviously loading the back definitely helped. It was dry, obviously that helped as well. But yeah, apart from that, it was pretty much just hooked up the 153 tons, put the foot down. But I think one of the things that really made the difference is that we have what we call a high power function on the van. And it's like a temporary turbo boost. So for 2 minutes, you can access additional torque and power from the vehicle batteries that delivers extra power to the rear axle. So if you are needing to tow up a steep hill or accelerate with additional payload or in a tough driving situation, then that high power mode kicks in to help the operator with that mission. And we definitely used high power for the full 100 meters of the towing exercise for sure. And I think that really did make the difference.
But Mike, I'm going to dispute that was the only difference. You know, for me, you cheated terribly in that you got Britain's strongest man to put his foot down. If it was just me or you, it wouldn't have worked, right?
Well, we thought if we put a ton in the back, we needed the right amount of ballast in the front just to counterbalance. And
you're very brave. Now he's not here.
It's like he's not here to contest, but yeah, he was a good choice. I think the symmetry between strongest man and strongest van it was really nice. And Adam's a great guy and really made the day extra special for sure.
Mike, given that you're exceeding the van's capable legal towing amount by some 150 tons, where did 153 come from? Why not 152 or 160? How did you work that out?
So we knew that the target was 130. We had to beat 130 because Tesla Model X set the record back in 2018, towing a Qantas jet over in Australia. So we kind of had to set that as an initial benchmark, but we had guidance from the factory, again, simulation, that the vehicle could tow up to a maximum of 150. So we thought, well, let's go for it. We couldn't really know the exact weight we were towing until the day because we had to use a specialist mobile weighbridge at the site where we set the record to weigh the equipment. We had a GB Finch truck, which was around about 100 tons that had an earth mover on the back. And then we had a 40-ton X-Way truck fully loaded with gravel. And then for good measure, we borrowed a fire engine off the airport that had all its water tanks filled, which was about 20 tons. So we had a rough idea it was around about 150, but until we actually weighed all the vehicles and put them in a long chain, we didn't actually know the exact amount. But we set a target of 150 and we did just over that. So we were really pleased with that. And we smashed the Tesla record, which was quite nice.
Yeah, good job. And I can say from personal experience, the amount of planning that goes into a record of any kind is colossal.
We're not going to hit
It's a good work.
Could I make his record, will you? Just.
Anyway, Johnny, I think you need to pick up the next guest. Mike, it's been fantastic, really insightful.
Thank you,
Mike.
One last quick question, yes or no? Is there a crew cab version available?
Yes.
Yes. There you go, Andy Wells answered your question.
Thanks, guys.
Tons.
Thanks, Mike. Stick around though if you can for the last few minutes.
There are a couple of questions in the chat box. I just want to remind you that if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A tab so we don't miss them, and we'll look to address them a little bit later on in the session. Moving on, let's get some real-world experiences for all of our caravan and motorhome lovers. Who do we have, Sam?
So we have Matt Sims, who hosts. Matt, if you want to put your video on, please do. Matt hosts the Motorhome Matt podcast, the place for advice and industry insights into the world of motorhomes, caravans, and camper vans. Matt has years of experience running multiple award-winning businesses in motorhome hire, sales, storage, and more recently, an outdoor living shop in-store and online. The podcast features exclusive content from leisure industry leaders and unpacks the latest developments, including how the EV movement will affect leisure vehicle owners. Little known fact, he was responsible for placing His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, on stage in Abu Dhabi as a projected hologram which is cool. The first and only time any royal has appeared in this way on stage anywhere in the world. So yeah, cool little known fact there, Matt. Thank you. And welcome to our little show. It's great to have you on here and talking about something that, frankly, none of us really know much about, but you very much do. So, so thank you very much for being on here.
Very honoured to be invited. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Good. So where do we want to start, ladies and gents?
Matt,
Questions?
one new subscriber, I will say.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. It's you. That's two now then.
Yeah.
You and my dad.
Matt, I have a question. So I just want to know your experience. How do you plan? I know for me, when I do long journeys, when I went down to Switzerland, it was very easy for me to plan and manage my charging stops. But whilst you're towing a caravan, do you encounter any specific challenges, or alternatively, any benefits from using EV to tow a caravan for this purpose?
So we should just first position Matt as EV curious.
Yeah.
So not a professional at all of this, really, in terms of EV, but really knowledgeable about the challenge that needs to be solved. Matt, would that be fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I don't own an EV. We have a hybrid.
Being a challenge, then, Matt. Sorry, if you were to use an EV for towing a caravan.
So I'd say there are numerous challenges that we have been learning about as a consumer of this world, and as Paul kindly points out, not an expert, but someone who's finding their way. So I'd say the biggest problem is driving in to recharge your car with a caravan on the back. That's the first challenge. I guess there are lots of obstacles for our kind of consumers in our market to jump into an EV in terms of what it can tow, how far it can go. And we have our audience is, I mean, our marketplace is massive. It's hundreds of thousands of people. It was interesting. I was reading some stats this morning ahead of this session, and there are said to be estimated nearly 800,000 caravans on the road in the UK.
Wow.
And that's predicted to grow. There's a number here, 1 second. It's predicted to grow to 890,000 by 2030. So caravanning is here to stay. Now, the growth in motorhome sales is increasing. So we're seeing a huge growth in people getting into a motorhome or a camper van. So for you guys, you've already mentioned the ID Buzz. So a VW product or a van conversion. So that's growing as well. And we're seeing sort of 15 to 20,000 new registrations every year at the moment. So in terms of challenges for a caravan, it's the obvious ones that you would know. All those classics of range anxiety, charging infrastructure, but then the practicality of where am I going to put my caravan when I'm charging my car? There are chargers around which are drive-through, and we're campaigning to the charging industry. If we can have our voice heard at any opportunity, say, please think about vans, motorhomes. You know, we're 7.5, 8 meters long, sometimes longer, and towing a caravan. So those are the main considerations, I'd say. And where do you charge it? Can you charge it on a campsite? You can plug into the hookup, but you're going to get a very low 13 amp max charge, which is just going to take 2 days. So I guess those are the main concerns that people have got. It's a massive learning curve in our niche, and we feel very much kind of not at the center of it at all, I would say. And so I'm very much flying a flag for it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah. I was going to say, from the accessibility point of view, it'd be good for an EV driver towing their caravan to know which networks, which particular charge points is going to enable them to charge. But then again, it falls into the EV van world as well, doesn't it, Paul? You know, with height restrictions and bays big enough and various other things. So I don't know if that's something you're doing, Sam, in GridServe world, giving more information.
Before we go to Sam, Sarah has a little seagull raised.
Question. I've got lots. It was related to Matt's previous point before we move on to Sam's GridServe picture. I've had questions coming in via text, actually, and one of them was, when you have to unhitch a caravan to then use an EV charger, are there any sort of insurance implications involved with diverting the caravan whilst you go and charge? And as far as I know, there actually aren't that many drive-in and through EV charging spaces. We've just seen Osprey launch Salmon's Leap down in Devon, which does allow for that. And I know that lots of commercial vehicles, including credit to Lorna McAteer, has been fighting very hard to make people very aware that unhitching and moving the vehicle apart from the trailer is not appropriate for commercial charging. So what's your experience of that insurance piece about leaving the caravan over there?
It's a great question. And we recently challenged a few insurance companies on exactly this point around security and keeping your caravan insured. And if you're unhitching it from the car, then all those requirements of the insurer apply. So if they require you to have a wheel clamp or a hitch lock, the tracker's active on the caravan, they have to be in play the moment you unhitch it. In a fuel station or the services, it's hitched on the car. If it was taken from the car, it would probably be insured. A number of insurers have confirmed that they would cover it in that scenario. People have come back from a coffee and the caravan's gone. But if you unhitch it, so even on a campsite, they expect the wheel clamp and the hitch lock to be fitted. It would be the same in a motorway services or recharge point car park where you've had to abandon the caravan in order to charge the car. And that's a hassle because you've got to get the wheel clamp out, you've got to get it fitted, you've got to put the hitch lock on. It's bad enough having to unhitch the caravan. You know, that can be hard work, particularly you were talking earlier about your Adria experience. Yeah, they're a heavy caravan. And, you know, that can be a challenge. So if the caravan is then taken and it's off the car, it's not insured.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. It actually came in from Kim from Paythrough, and I know she tows a trailer with a vehicle on the back of that rather than the caravan, but the same rules will surely apply, leaving that trailer behind whilst you charge.
Yeah.
So Sam, over to you. Sorry I interrupted that question from Johnny.
Not at all. What was the question, Johnny, around public access charging for towing things like caravans, I guess, right?
In regards to what they're going to turn up to, whether they can actually charge it, you've got to hook up, or even for a van for that sake. You know, are you providing that information ahead of the drivers?
Yeah, it is. It's a tricky one. It's definitely a tricky one because they are, you know, for want of a better expression, awkward in shape and when it comes to trying to access from a charging perspective. And realistically, the best way of doing charging with things like towing, caravans, etc., is some sort of drive-through methodology to make it easy and not need to unhitch. But of course, that takes a tremendous amount of space, as does a long wheelbase van and other things like of that equal shape and size. So, you know, the passenger world is passenger traffic, passenger car derived van and car world is reasonably facilitated now with an ever-growing number of chargers. But they're typically drive-in, reverse-in type use case, and that doesn't fit with longer things. I think on a wider context, as I've said before on the show and other times, you know, I'm working a lot within GridServe at the moment on commercial charging and how we facilitate things for, you know, as big as 40 to 44 tons tractor and trailer units towing around the country. And I'm starting to think now that there are three areas of charging which we almost need three levels for. We need car world charging, where you've got something that's reasonably short and can reverse and drive in. That's one application we've already got in existence. On the big side, we've got EHGVs and large trucks that need to be separate from a safety perspective, but also are going to need tremendous amounts of power. And then somewhere in the middle is this caravan, maybe even twinned perhaps with coaches and buses type logic, so that we put things with lots of people and long things in one area, small things in another, and then the big heavy stuff that's pulling huge tons of haulier type goods around in another. So I think that there needs to be.
I presume that middle bit has vans in as well.
It probably depends, because there needs to be some sort of delineation.
Where do vans go then? Sorry,
well,
Matt, we've hijacked. We're off caravans now. Where do vans go?
You hijacked it. I think car derived vans need to go in with the cars, and I think that potentially the longer vehicle, like long wheelbase vans and rigids and things like that, probably need to sit within the commercial bays. So you may get, say, 2 vans can fit in one bay that one lorry would go in. Because one of the other challenges of drive-through, even with a caravan, is that if you've got a drive-through solution, you're almost certainly blocking one of the other chargers in the process, which again is not ideal because you're then taking up 2 chargers for one point. Perhaps in the commercial world, it's a bit more manageable. But so there isn't really an easy solution for this, I don't think, because whichever way you're gonna block things for other people. But I think that needs to be, you know, something we're certainly working on, and I'm sure Ian from Osprey and all of the others are also looking strongly into how we can facilitate this sort of solution for these slightly harder to park vehicles.
So Saz has got a question with a seagull. I presume the question for Matt.
to explain this to you guys because it's summer holidays. Okay, so Matt, I read the Caravan Club magazine this month and I really enjoyed it. And I too saw that predicted 900,000 by 2030. But in the magazine, all the articles are still all about what diesel and petrol cars can tow and what size caravan will this allow, and the equivalent is probably true in the commercial market too, as in what van can tow. So UK camping and caravanning has all accelerated as part of COVID, which we know. And shout out to Cinch, who did do a study on the sort of top 5 cars to get. What's your experience of, well, I know you're just looking at it, so you've done research, I'm sure. Do you think there are enough vehicles out there at the moment that can tow?
No.
No, because we've got the BMW iX, Tesla Model X, Audi e-tron, Mercedes EQC, the other one that Chris Gatti tested, and the Polestar 2. I've also seen the MG ZS tow.
EV6 can tow, can't it?
Yeah, let's go on the chat. That's amazing. But like, this is the journey that people are having to face, right? They're not just thinking about what caravan they might like to use or camper van, they're also thinking about what car they're going to have to invest in. And that's something I really think if you do get a chance to speak to Chris Gatti from Norway, he's well up for a podcast with you. Perhaps talk to him about his buying experience. How did he choose the vehicles that he then has all of his family with?
Brilliant. Yeah, I will. Perhaps you could make an intro to us for us both. I think there are a number of issues really. The Kia EV6 has been very popular, and Kia have been busy promoting that car to our industry through various trade shows and so on. And we have a number of journalists in our niche that are using that car with a caravan. And of course, it's got the V2L technology, which is genius when you're trying to run power in your caravan and you're not hooked up to a campsite. That's really clever. The issue, I think, is many-fold. One is cost. So an EV costs so much more new than a diesel car. And of course, the huge issue of FUD. It's massive in our niche. We are typically an older generation, so I'd go as far to say our parents are the traditional caravanners. I mean, there's a younger market caravanning now, of course. And in fact, the teardrop caravans, the tiny little ones, have become really, really popular. And then the B+E was lifted. So now everyone can tow up to 3.5 tons if the car can. So that's opened that right up to caravan dealers to sell all sorts of caravans. But I think our market is still very, very traditional. We are slow to change. We fear change as an industry, and innovation is not something that's been prolific in our industry for a long time. And there are very small innovations that happen, and they're massive, and they're silly little innovations. There's recently been a new toilet chemical. It's a toilet chemical. It's a revelation. It really is, because innovation like that just doesn't happen in our world. So this is a massive change. And the piece that I'm preaching is one of education. Don't fear it. This is a transition. This is going to take a long time. And Paul and I have been together on my podcast before, haven't we, Paul? And we've been talking about it. This is a journey. This is not going to happen overnight. And my recommendation to people who are looking to buy a new motorhome or a new car to tow a caravan is, if you're thinking, well, I'm happy buying a diesel, go and buy a diesel. It's fine. Go and buy petrol. If an electric is an option for you, then go and look at it. But that's a massive learning curve to go on, as well as learning how to use a caravan, especially if you've never had one before. So that's a big enough learning curve in itself. So there's lots of layers of, I guess, objection to access this. And it really is a narrow market, I think, of option for consumers at the moment. And we need more. And the other thing as well is that I'm not sure that the EV manufacturers are really pushing that hard into our market and really making themselves very visible. As you've observed in the magazine, which is like our Bible, it's our go-to. There are several, of course, but that's one of them.
That's one.
It's just not prolific. Why aren't they spending money advertising to its readership? It's over 100,000 people read that every week, every month. They're missing out on a massive market. We are slow to adopt this. That's true, but we will, and it's coming. But we need educating. That's the piece. And that's where we need help.
I'm going to ask to take up a column in that magazine. I've decided.
Go
Johnny,
through it.
I'm thinking we're going to need to move on and bring Matt back shortly, because we need Simon, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yeah. So
Thanks,
we
you,
are.
Matt.
That is amazing.
Oh.
Really insightful about what we need to do. We'll get more from you.
Yeah. Are you joining us for the after hour session? We are still doing that, aren't we?
Yeah, I'll be there.
We'll speak then. But I will say I'm now a follower of you and Chris Gatty, so hopefully I'll learn a lot more than I do now before my adventure next year. Now, for a perspective from one of our sponsors partners, Sam, over to you.
Thank you very much, Johnny, and thank you, Matt. I've got a couple of questions for you for the after hours as well, so looking forward to asking those. All right, Simon, look, all right on cue. Didn't even ask him have to do it. Simon Unglis. I think it's fair to say Simon probably knows his stuff on fleets on the basis of over 40 years working on the vehicle supply industry, from joining road transport operations in, that's right, 1979. I was minus 2. As commercial group fleet manager at the AA, he is responsible for circa 2,700 LCVs, which, in the interest of the acronym police avoidance, stands for light commercial vehicles. One of those 2,700 LCVs is the all-electric Toyota ProAce that supported our recent Guinness World Record attempt. And actually, we are, however, joking aside, forever indebted to you and all at the AA for supporting on that, because you were amazing. Right, little known fact, in September, he is cycling 300 miles from Wigan to Wembley for MND charities, which I know the cycling machine that is Sarah Sloman will be very impressed with. So, Simon, we've had you on our show before. It's a pleasure and delighted to have you back again. So thank you for taking the time. How are you?
Invitation? Yeah, all good, thank you. So
excellent.
I will just say that I was most impressed with Sarah's efforts, though, because you've done the Dragon Tour, didn't you? I don't think I could do that much. I couldn't do that much climbing at my age.
The climbing, the distance and the climbing. So it's 14,000 feet in a day and 190 miles in one go. So it's 14 hours in the saddle. Brutal.
Good effort.
But I shall be following you with interest. Send over the fundraising links or whatever as well. We want to support you as best we can.
I will say we're just doing it over 4 days as well. So, but it is off road. But anyway, enough of that. Right. Okay. So everybody else has actually said what I had to say. So I'm off.
Say it again, because it's been a real challenge for you guys. For the AA, you know, everybody looks at them and just thinks, oh, you don't do towing. Well, what's the problem? Go electric. Sort it out. Tell us why.
Right. So I'm just going to say, reiterate what other people have said. So I made a few notes here. So we obviously, last time I think I used the C word and everybody sort of like took a step back. So those compromises still, I mean, they're even more with towing. Let's be honest about that. So we talked before about payload. We're really concerned about the range when towing. I know that Mike's on here, but I mean, we've got a couple of E-dailies on order. Are we going to get 235k when it's towing? I doubt it. There is another manufacturer bringing out one of our main manufacturers bringing out a new midvan next year, which is promised a 2-ton payload, towing payload, or 2-ton capacity to tow, and the range drops from their prediction from 262 to 128. I mean, that's pretty brutal. And I think the other C word is cost. I think I think Matt might have mentioned about the cost. You know, these things are 2.5 times the 2.5 times the amount generally, sort of a rule of thumb of a diesel vehicle, and just don't have the same capabilities. Now, somebody did bill me a straight talking. I'm not sure if that's straight talking enough, but that's the sort of
pretty straight, isn't it? But Simon, I think the key question is that, you know, this is an evolution, right? We're not going to do everything overnight. How are you taking the approach in your own fleet for, you know, recognizing that there are some difficulties with towing, but that, you know, you've already got 2 E-dailies on order to sort of fulfill some of the need and learn, right? We all talked about education and awareness. How is that working for you?
That's good, yeah. I mean, we start off with the Pro Aces. We've got, I don't know, about 15 of them now. There's some more going into service shortly. We're not put tow bars on them. The others that we will invest heavily, I think, next year in the other product, and we will learn. I mean, you know, I think for next year, best part, I don't know, sort of 500-600 vans to order. You know, would I order more than 50 electric? Probably, you know, not. You know, look, even as one of the older generation in the industry, you know, I think that we want to be at the forefront and certainly push the boundaries. But we do have to, you know, sort of minimum vehicle capabilities and stuff, and we have to obviously serve our members and obviously make money. Can't get away from that. But yeah, education, everything's about education. Everything that we're doing all the time is about that. You know, the vehicles that, you know, we've done the EV rally. There was one of the Pro Ace EV Chargers followed that, wasn't there, with the 2 patrols a year. I mean, done brilliant. And the feedback from them was sensational about how the Pro Ace drove and stuff. I know that the ID Buzz that we also used as one of the main vehicles within that done a brilliant job as well. But again, that one doesn't, that current cargo doesn't tow at all. I think there's some plans for a longer wheelbase. Well, we've got Paul. You're pulling it. You're starting to worry me now. That
It'll tow 1,000 kilos, but
okay,
it's not enough for and the long wheelbase won't come out in the cargo because it won't have any payload. So
yeah, so that is so obviously didn't register with our engineer that was anywhere near enough. And I think interestingly, if you like the new Maxus CD7, I mean I think that's got about 1,500 ton capacity. Just not enough for us. We need to get to 2 ton. But going back to it, everything's got to be a learning, and hopefully in time when there's more choice from more manufacturers or more volume, then the costs will come down. We talk about whole life costs, and I think there is still generally accepted that whole life costs of an EV shouldn't be too far that off a diesel vehicle. But adding in, again, I think I said it last time, I don't want to be boring. I didn't have a very interesting fact about me either, did I? But other than I'm old, is that I forgot what I was going to say now. Is that that we learn these things, but I don't know where we go. But we have to do it, and we will do it. But we've got a really aggressive ESG target, 2035 to be carbon neutral. We will get there eventually.
But isn't it great? Because you're the Automobile Association, right? And even though if we were to be absolutely hard facts, you would say actually it's a real struggle for us to do this, and legitimately say actually, we're going to put this off for a little bit, and we're going to decarbonize when the vehicles are available. But you're leading the way, and that's what I love. Recently, there was a big frequently asked questions document produced that's now on your website, which answers so many questions. But you can only answer the questions genuinely if you're dipping your toe in the market and learning at your own cost, right? Because it isn't going to be, easy, is it?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's not only about the runners. I was coming up to say, wasn't I? And I forgot I'd lost my train. But I mean, the productivity bit's the bit. If the whole vehicle life cost may well come out the same, but the fact is, currently, that we can't get the same amount of productivity, or we won't get the same amount of productivity out of an EV at the moment. Let's say that may well change. And the other one that was quite interesting, I know that we talked briefly when I was on before about a truck. And we still say it's confidential, but I think everybody in the industry knows about it. Even the guy from Merck came up to me and asked about it. But we tow with the trucks as well. So going up, I was coming down the M6 the other day. There was one of our trucks going up, and car on the back and a caravan behind. So just got to remember to put a tow hitch on the whatever we do. But so there's right across our whole range. And it's interesting. The other one that I'd had written down here was like space to charge. And obviously everybody covered that one. Thanks. So not much else to say. Go on,
I did spot in the Q&A a question from Gary Comerford. He does the EV Musings podcast, which is very, very good. He's talking about creating a van that can tow a large load a long distance is not complicated. It will mean throwing lots of money at it with larger batteries and bigger motors, but this has a cost impact on the purchase price of the van. So at what point does that cost curve move a towing van into uncommercial territory? You talked about the diesel parity earlier, but where's the threshold where you say flat, no, not going to happen? Do you know?
Well, I know because the manufacturers are going to listen up and they're going to go, oh, I know to start the thing. I think, look, at the moment, look, I know that on LinkedIn recently, genuinely put, I was in a really privileged position to do this, this role. We've got owners that, like even next year, we will have a development, well, hopefully we'll, CapEx for a development fleet. And then what are they going to be? We don't know, do we? Because we don't really know what they are. But I mean, where we, if we go back to the little hydrogen vehicle that we bought, I mean, it was a huge amount of investment. I mean, it was, it was only second probably to a truck, and so I don't know where that price point comes, because if there is range and there's payload and there's tank capacity, then absolutely you would you'd think that you would pay more for that to get. But it's actually quite a difficult thing, is it? Because you need bigger batteries. I mean, I guess the standard battery technology and taking the weight out of batteries. And Paul's nodding, which is great. We agree on some things.
But it's also about where the 4.25 ton legislation goes around extending the payload and because you can't tow on 4.25 tons at the moment. So you that's like off the cards. But that hopefully should change. But again, we need government to get back the consultation that's been out there for some time to say, right, these are the decisions we're making. And I'm hearing on the grapevine that DFT are asking for clarification for people that are running 4.25 ton stuff. It's like, just get on with it, guys. That, you know, enough pontificating over the gnat. Just get on with swallowing a camel, will you, please?
Just get Edmund on the case lobbying as well. But no, it's a good point. But look, you know, we can only do what's within regulations, and if somebody comes out of that holy grail where we can get, you know, the payload we need and 2-ton capacity and probably, you know, a towing range of probably 200 miles, it's not that massive. You know, is it 50 miles? Did I say? Yeah, 50 miles may be different than what we're potentially going to get. Just feels like, you know, just 120 just feels a bit light, really. But in reality, probably put it into you know, patrols in the centre of in the city centres, then absolutely, it probably, I mean, that'd be more than enough, you know. So I guess we're just being greedy and want to be able to do it everywhere. But you know, one of my aims next year is not to put all of these into city centres. You know, I want to send one into the wilds of, you know, the wilds of Suffolk, being my home area. But you know, so yeah, but look, you go back to education. Absolutely right. All a learning process.
Johnny, do we need to get the other guys back? Because I know that Mike is not going to be able to stay beyond 1 o'clock. So just to say,
yeah, we can ask them to turn their cameras back on for the last few minutes of this session.
Mike, yeah, here we go. Oh, there's Matt. Have we got Mike still? Is he? Yes.
Yeah, we've got everyone.
We better have a last word from Mike first, because I know that he's got a hard stop at 1. But Simon and Matt can stay on.
Paul, perhaps Mike could answer the question, which is from Mina in the Q&A, which is, does the sensitivity of accelerator pedal metering on EVs need to be tweaked to make it easier to pull away from a standing start when towing?
The wonderful magic that I don't understand in the van through the ESP system does all that for you. So the vehicle will detect if the vehicle has a trailer, and it will adjust its acceleration and braking accordingly.
That's the clever tech that solves that problem.
Like
but there's also, I suppose there's also the low tech solution, which is your foot, right? So we still need to educate people to be able to manage the throttle in such a way as to create efficiency and moving away, you know, carefully, to try and reduce the amount of energy drained on acceleration.
Definitely, I think that's true. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, obviously, you know, if you're towing 3.5 tons, you need to be aware of what you've got behind and make sure you're modify your driving accordingly. But the van should take a lot of that away from you, because it will know how to handle itself. So yeah, I guess just be mindful of what you're towing.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. But the
Matt, did you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, Mike, before you go, may I ask you a quick question? Are you focused on the motorhome industry in the UK and Europe with the Iveco? Because it's not a brand we see very often.
Yeah, it's definitely an area that I think we can explore with the eDaily. I think I know we're talking about towing today, but one of the other things that eDaily has to offer is the onboard power, which we have available up to 15 kilowatts. So that gives ample power to run onboard equipment, which can include motorhome function as well. So we've tended to find the UK industry favour front wheel drive diesels. But actually with the onslaught of EV, that kind of resets the marketplace. And I definitely think that eDaily has something to offer the leisure market with the towing and the onboard power. So we'd definitely be looking to try and explore that in the future. It's a sector we've not been able to crack with a rear wheel drive product until now, but definitely something to keep an eye out for the future for sure.
Thank you.
Do you know anyone or any company that's looking at your product for a bespoke camper van build at the moment, Mike? Or
it's been quite surprising the amount of shows and events we've been to across the summer. There's always at least one person comes up to us every day and says, I want to convert that into a camper van. So there's lots of individuals out there that have the concept in mind, but we haven't got to a point where we've agreed anything with, you know, a large converter yet in the UK, but happy to explore for sure.
Okay. Okay, maybe it's a EV cafe project. Who knows? Right, that is all we have time for. But as I said, the conversation doesn't need to end here. We will be firing up the after-hours session. It is a goodbye to Mike, so thank you very much, Mike.
Thanks for the invite.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. We will continue the conversation and answer some of your questions. To join, simply click the link on the Zoom link. Maybe we can provide that in the chat box before we sign off on other social media channels.
I think we're finished. Let me just check.
Yeah. But as we just